Good evening. On behalf of the Richard Thompson Memorial Lecture Committee, I want to welcome you to the 2010 Richard Thompson Memorial Lecture. This presentation this evening is the 37th in a series of annual lectures dedicated to the memory of Richard W. Thompson. The Richard Thompson Memorial Lecture Committee wants to gratefully acknowledge the Thompson family's long-time interest and contributions to Iowa State University and their concern for the well-being of American Indian students on campus. Rick's parents, Marge and Larry Thompson, drove up to Ames from Kansas City to attend the memorial lecture almost every year from 1974 until their deaths in 2008 and 2009. These close friends are fondly remembered and deeply missed. Let us reflect a moment on the man in whose honor we gather this evening. Rick Thompson was born in Glens Falls, New York on April 19, 1949. He grew up in Kansas City and came to Ames to attend ISU. During his residence in Ames, Rick served as the clerk of the Ames Friends meeting. As a 20-year-old, Rick was respected as a leader of both the young and old. While at ISU, Rick was a member of the Cyclone AIDS, Cardinal Key, and the University Lectures Committee. He graduated in 1971 with majors in anthropology and geology. Rick was on the National Affairs Institute Committee and chaired the first American Indian Symposium in 1971. Outcomes of that symposium included the formation of UNASA, the United Native American Student Association, and several years later, the American Indian Studies program at Iowa State University. After graduation, Rick worked in Washington, D.C. with the Friends Committee on National Legislation on Indian Affairs. As a Quaker, Rick was opposed to the war in Vietnam, but he went to Vietnam as a volunteer civilian worker at the Quang Ngai Hospital. In pursuit of his duties there, he met a tragic and untimely death in an airplane crash on November 17, 1973. Rick Thompson's life was dedicated to the attainment of human rights for American Indians and all human beings. His example epitomizes the dedication to purpose and action necessary to attain those goals, some of which have not yet been reached, and others are under attack in today's contentious American society. But Rick's exemplary spirit continues to inspire and motivate us today as we continue the struggle to recognize and maintain human diversity on campus, in our nation, and throughout the world. Introducing the 2010 Thompson Memorial Lecture is Leslie Moselle, a freshman in the Textiles and Clothing program. Leslie is one of the leaders of UNASA and ACES, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. She is a member of the Lakota Nation. Please join me in welcoming Leslie to the podium.
I'm Leslie Moselle, and I'm here to present Ken Wright. Ken Wright is a Tuscarora Indian. He has over 34 years of experience in conceptual architectural and interior design projects. Ken's expertise includes museums, libraries, and cultural centers, and corporate offices. His award-winning projects include National Museum of American Indian and Campen Eagle Wing Center. Ken has many other accomplishments to be proud of besides his architectural design. Ken holds a NAMI, which is a Native American Music Award for Best Blues Album of the Year. He is a member of and he's also a member of the Pfeiffer University Baseball Hall of Fame. Please give a warm welcome to Ken Ryan.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate that. I sure am honored to be here with you tonight, and I want to thank everyone at Iowa State University for having me and being so gracious to feed me very well while I was here. I am a good Indian. I'll eat anytime people bring out the food. I certainly appreciate it, and it was real good to spend time with students this afternoon and get to look at some of their talents and some of the qualities they're bringing to some of their design projects, and to help them out this afternoon a little bit. And I was really pleasantly surprised to see quite a few folks that I would graciously welcome into my firm. So I think you're growing some good folks here. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to work with them. I can't say that about every school I go to around the country. Some do a better job than others. So everybody tries pretty hard, but you can always see where you're being taught a good mix of design talent and technical qualities as well. So I think you folks are really doing a good job here. I'm a Tuscarora Indian, Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse, originally from North Carolina. We had a major real estate dispute with the federal government in 1722. And we were driven out of North Carolina and fled northward and were adopted by the Oneidas of the Five Nation of the Iroquois Confederacy. And we became the sixth of the Six Nations. Some of the families had never seen snow before, and they were pretty scared when they were seeing snow up and past Buffalo that was 6-7 feet tall. So some folks came back to North Carolina. So there are bands of Tuscaroras in New York, North Carolina. There's a reservation also in Canada. At one time, I understand there were about 18 million Tuscaroras around the country. We've lost a few since then. We've been around a long time. We've got burial sites in North Carolina that are 4,000 years old. My mother always said we were here when the rocks were still soft. That's quite a long time ago. We have always practiced sustainable design. I practice what I call red architecture and red interior design instead of green. Since we were the first ones to do it, we have been producing LEED certified structures for 20 to 40,000 years. Is that a good number?
Oh, that's
20 to 40,000 years. So I think we've got a pretty good history about what we were doing. I used to ask my mother a lot of questions about my family, about our past, about what was going on. My mother was quite a philosopher in her own way. She would stop me when I asked one too many questions and say, if you were supposed to know, you would have been there. But I was raised in North Carolina, went to Pfeiffer College, Pfeiffer University now, studied art and mostly baseball, and played professional baseball when I got out of school. Played for the Washington Senators and the Texas Rangers for about a year and a half, and got an injury, and it was a pretty big shock to my system. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went back, of course, to talk to my mother, the old sage, and she said, I said, Mom, I didn't pay any attention in school whatsoever. I played ball. And then I played ball in the summers, and I got paid. And now I'm hurt, and I don't know what to do. And she said, you should get a job as an ologist. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, a biologist, a psychologist, they all make a lot of money. Get a job as an ologist. But I wasn't quite geared to do that. Having grown up at High Point, North Carolina, from Pembroke, North Carolina, my family all moved there when we were I was about 6 years old, and so they could work in the furniture factories and hosiery mills there. I went to a high school with 2,000 students, and one day a guy called me Squanto. once. One time. So it was a pretty big shock to my system having to go back and headed back to school and pay for my education that I didn't pay any attention for when I was there with my own money. And then I went to work with a firm called Institutional Interiors in North Carolina. And we started designing libraries. There was a huge bond referendum for libraries there. And I started designing public libraries. There were more than we could actually get around and work on. And I really appreciated the special collections areas in the libraries. And that really led me to the museum work, because that was more specific types of projects and a lot more higher end than the public libraries were. And I was very interested in how museums work. There wasn't much Indian work at the time, and I was very, very fortunate to be selected to work on the National Museum for the American Indian for the Smithsonian Institution. That is probably the one and the foremost opportunity for me to do something positive for my people in my lifetime. Because as Denise Scott Brown told me one time, she who holds the pen holds the power. So I had the opportunity to really do the right thing and put the right representation about Indian people out there for the world to see. Since then, I've done work on the Mashantucket Pequot Museum as well. After that, the advent of casinos came about, Native American gaming. And I was really thrust into casino design. I got a crash course in that because a lot of tribes wanted me to work on their projects. And with that came hotel design and hospitality design, because most of the casinos would have 6 or 7 restaurants in them. I hear a lot of folks design restaurants and they get all freaked out because they have to open a restaurant by a certain date. Well, when you do a casino, you have to open 6 restaurants by a certain date. So I don't have much sympathy for them. About 75% of the casino and hospitality work is done in our Atlanta office, and we also have an office in Dallas. Urban Design Group is 38-person firm, and we've been in business for about 45 years. I joined the firm last year as a partner. We are currently doing, one of our studios in Dallas is working on a project for George Lucas and at the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts. And if you get to Los Angeles anytime in the near future, it'd be good for you to go by and see this school. It is, of course, state-of-the-art. George Lucas is going to fund the project. It has 9 major sound studios and film studios, one less than MGM has in their movie complex in Los Angeles. I learned a lot along the way working with a lot of folks in my 34 years. I was fortunate enough to work on the National Museum of the American Indian with James Polshek. I was in his office for a little over a year and a half, and he taught me that design is design. And it really came to the forefront with me since then, as I have tried to broaden my horizons about what I can design and what is good to design, what is fun to design. Besides conceptual architecture and interior design, I've designed a rocking chair for Fran Tarkenton that cost $7,000. Fits it perfect, though. Motorcycles, I have a line of clothing called Red Thunderwear. Gear shift knobs, furniture, lamps, carpet. And I design music, writing music and lyrics, and developing phrases and putting them all together is design for me. So I enjoy playing music. I wrote a song called Caught You White-Handed. There was the #1 song in Canada at all the Aboriginal radio stations. All the Indians liked it a lot. On the respectful infusion of Native American culture in architectural design, I'm very fortunate to do about 95% of my projects are Native projects. And I'm very fortunate that I get to work on those Because I don't have to go to a magazine, I don't have to go to the latest seminar, I don't have to go anywhere to find the inspiration for my design. It's all staring me right there in the face. Between the Indian tribe, their culture, their history, their way of life, and the environment in which they live, all the inspiration for any design I ever do is right there. The way you extract that information and the way that you carefully infuse that information into a design that can be accepted as a respectful design by the tribe is really a home run for me. Sustainability is always demanded. It has to be about the people. You know all these names of all the tribes around the country. Does anybody ever realize that all these names like Tuscarora and Sioux and this, that, and the other, those weren't our names. They were given to us. We always called ourselves the people. It's a very strange phenomenon. A tribe 2,000 miles from this tribe calls themselves the people of the rivers, the people of the hidden grass. But it's always about the people. And I think that's important when we talk about how we're designing and who we're designing for. Our job is not to create monuments for ourselves, not to create a monument for historical manners or for magazines to be published about, but to be about the people is something that they can use and be proud of, and that their culture can be kept alive and can strong and be forever in a place where it should be. The design has to be about place. It has to function as a particular project type. My philosophy has always been, if you design a building or an interior for a tribe, and you pick this building up and move it 2,000 miles and it works, it's wrong. Simple as that. Indian architecture has always sprung out of the ground. It's never been forced into the ground. It's always been built with materials that were on hand. We weren't importing teak from Saudi Arabia to build something. So it's that's always been my philosophy, to take everything down to its most basic level and start there. We as designers are really keen to jump off on this real esoteric plane and start working, but we don't have all the foundation that we need to start our design. The way we do this is something that I started years and years and years ago. It's called a Cultural Values Workshop. To make it about a certain tribe in a certain place, you have to start there, as far as I'm concerned. I found out maybe 20 years ago my job wasn't to inflict my designs on people. We like to go to a tribe when we start a project and ask them to set aside a committee. We don't care how many people it is. We don't care if it's 2, 3. I think with the Smithsonian project, there were almost 1,000 people for the Cultural Values Workshop. And we divided that group into teams, and they had spokesperson on that team that had to deliver an answer to this. We really like to have the oldest and the youngest people at the Cultural Values Workshop. My mother said that would be a good way to do it because they're closest to the light. But you have to live and breathe the word respect during this process. The Cultural Values Workshops that we do a lot of research on a particular tribe, usually 2 or 3 weeks worth. We would gather as many images and as much information as we could, meet with the tribe and their committee. We would plaster all those images all over the room, and for the tribe to react to what they're seeing up there. And inevitably, though, you'll see a member come up to you and say, "That's not really my basket. That's so-and-so's basket from 2,000 miles away. So can't use that. The pattern's off of this." Or they'll see something, "We'd love for you to be able to use this pouch here, but it's a medicine pouch. So you can't use that." So you're narrowing down your opportunities and getting to the real gist of everything as you go along. At the same time, we're asking a series of about 30 questions as we go along. And what we're looking for is a consensus. We're looking for common answers. And we're looking for people to really get in, and sometimes it causes real family type debates as we do this. I had to do one in Sacramento for the Shingle Springs Band, the Miwok, and there were two brother and a sister that sat in the room in the workshop with us, but they were at odds with the younger brother who had college training. So he sat outside on a picnic table. So I'd have to ask them the question, and when they gave me the answer, I'd have to go outside and get the answer from him, come back inside. But we would write these on large Post-it note type papers, and we would plaster these all over the wall, memorialize these answers and comments that we got back from these questions. We talked about cardinal directions, we talked about materials, we talked about how you got around, orientation of families, orientation of housing, building materials, cosmology, lots of different topics. And we were looking for common answers. And we got these answers, we memorialized them, put them on the walls. When we're finished, we would take them back to our shop and start working on our conceptual design. When we finished our conceptual design, with this as the foundation, we'd take it back and we would show everybody. We put the answers back up on the wall. And we show everybody, you asked us to do this, there it is. You told us to not do this, you don't see it anywhere in this design. So you keep doing this through conceptual design, schematic design, even through design development before you start your construction drawings. And it's really a good way to have your client buy into everything, feel like they're a part of it. And, some people want to hire me as a cultural consultant on teams for large projects. Well, I can't be a cultural consultant. I know about my tribe, and we can't even get along, I can't possibly know about everybody else's tribe, and it's really very disrespectful of me to stand up there and say I'm the expert about your tribe. So I'm gathering this information, and while I'm doing this, I'm trying to find out from the tribal members about how much of your culture are you willing to share with the outside world? And how would you like to do that? And what is proper in doing such? And it runs from the spectrum of one end to the other of, I want everybody to know that this is a Mohawk project. It's strictly a Mohawk project. It's our project, and I want to smack everybody in the face of our culture when they walk up. To the other end of it, where it's totally a business proposition. It's a business for us. We don't want to share. We're not missionaries to the outside world. So I don't want to do any of it. Well, 95% of the time it falls in the middle. So they want people to know that it's their project. They want to be proud of it in ways that they can appreciate and that might pique the interest of their visitors that come to the project. That they may be able to learn something in a respectful way. Go up and ask somebody, what is that pattern that I see on the wall and this wall covering or on that floor? But at the same time, tribal members can come in and know what that pattern is and be very proud of it. So that's pretty much the way we go about everything. And to me, I'm not smart enough to, and I'm not a daydreamer enough anymore. I guess I'm too old to look at something in Contract magazine and say, I used to do that when I first started. I can't wait to use this particular piece of furniture. And man, sooner or later, I'm going to inflict that on somebody. But I don't do that anymore, and with Indian people, that doesn't go very far. I'd like to show you some examples of some of these projects, and you'll see what we're talking about. This image, you'll see a little later the reference for this image. But if you just look at all this, look at the colors and textures and the hues and values that are in this particular shot. Now, this particular shot, I believe, is about some hot springs for the Big Sandy Band of Miwok Indians, Big Sandy Rancheria outside of Fresno. I believe. And there's quite a few phenomena that happens here. That's a hot springs, a natural hot springs here. So they went here for healing purposes. And they also noticed that the clouds came up in this area, and it would be quite cold above the surface of the water, and the clouds would form above where you were sitting in the water. And at times, when the clouds dissipated, you would get crystallization onto the rocks, and they called it diamond dust. And the diamond dust was really, really important to them. So that struck a big nerve with me, so I figured, sooner or later, there's got to be a place to use that. We looked at the things like the sweat lodges. You start to look at materials, how things are put together, the shape of things, the orientation of the entry of different items, the clothing that this man is wearing here. If you really get down and look at it, you start to look at striations and patterns. I'm always asking about animals. You see the rattlesnakes. Sometimes it's not proper to use a certain animal's patterns or markings in a design. Sometimes they really would like for you to. If I've got open access to doing that, that's a beautiful pattern right there. And it's all about their place. I've had different tribes want me to do different things about the eagle. The eagle being the most revered bird among Indian people. There's 2,000 feathers in that bird. They're absolutely perfectly symmetrical. I don't know if anybody knows this. Give a piece of information that won't mean anything to anybody in the future, but every wing has an exact match on the other side. Perfect aerodynamics. I had one tribe told me right off the bat, I don't want to see an eagle feather in my design. Do not make reference to them, their heads, their talons, nothing. And then I had another project I'll show you in a few minutes. They wanted to make sure that we had some kind of stylized eagle feathers in there. You start looking at all these birds that are indigenous to a certain area. Beautiful textures with the animals. The birds, the wolf. I mean, you can't. There's the whole color palette right there. I'm going to do a steakhouse. I could do a whole steakhouse out of this. Out of that color palette right there. It would be a knockout. Owls are a messenger of death for a lot of tribes, a lot of folks. So I usually stay away from owls whatsoever. I don't even bring it up normally. I don't like to even talk about it that much. Occasionally you run across a tribe that owls are kind of revered. But unless they tell me to do it, I don't do it. But awfully beautiful animal. This is the Big Sandy Band of Mono Indians. This is how they lived. This is what they ate. They ground mush on these rock outcroppings, kind of a mortar and pestle kind of situation with big logs, and they would grind mush here, and they ate mush, and that's what they lived on pretty much. They were ground zero, the ground of the gold rush. So you see lots of, once the poles got too big, they move over to the next outcropping. Well, I thought that was pretty cool, and some of their traditional housing is shown back here. So I was going to try to find a way to use that. That was pretty neat. That's all about them. This is where they packaged up everything. They used this brush around here to keep the wind off what they're doing. Ladies would sit in that little area there to take care of their business without everything blowing away. That tells me a lot about the weaving. I look at the flora and fauna and all the berries, all the food groups, the food types, and if you can just let your mind wander. Look at these colors. Can you ever dream of doing that? If you're doing your house, would you ever dream that you can come up with that many colors and make them that beautiful with those kind of hues and textures and pattern to it? But in some areas of the country, I can walk out there and stand in the middle of the field, and I've got the whole color palette. And actually what I do, a lot of times if they really want me to emphasize nature, I will go out and ask permission, and I'll get samples of all this, and I'll get dirt and rocks and everything, and I'll carry it back in to our office, and I'll get corresponding materials of carpets and wall coverings and things like that, and that matches this and that, and I'll take it back to the client. I'll dump it all out in the middle of the conference table, all the dirt and everything. And then I'll put the patterns and the carpets and the wall coverings and the fabrics and say, here it is, this matches that, that matches this. Never had somebody turn me down one time. Never. Had to clean up a lot of tables. Example of some where the animals, there are the ladies working. Geography is so important. This is all in the 25-mile radius of one particular tribe. Once again, look at this. I can't design that. Sage. Sage is so important to a lot of cultures. There's another one, the hot springs we're talking about. Then we looked at our arts and crafts. A lot of tribes were potters, a lot of tribes were basket weavers. It seems to have one or the other. Some did both. It was a way of life. It was a necessity for us. This is the baskets from one tribe, mostly from one tribe in California. Now, if you can't find a pattern in there to, all the casinos we design have so much carpet in there that it's easy to do a custom carpet. It doesn't cost any more money. So if I can do a carpet with the pathways are this, and the main field carpet is that, I mean, I've hit a home run already. So just look at these. These are incredible. At Smithsonian, we had baskets down to the size of a thimble that were very, very ornate. This one was beating seeds off this plant into another basket. But look at those coils in this to make it strong so she can slap the seeds off of it. And the patterns in this basket. Those are gorgeous. The one in the upper left-hand corner, I think, was valued at $25,000. The baby carriers. Here's the seed basket that the lady was using earlier. And then we look at games. Indians were always gamblers. I guess that's why we have casinos now, too. But we always had some form of game. These gaming sticks here, I was working with one tribe, and they wouldn't let me use that image right there. Nor would they let me use the basket that game was played in. But another tribe said, by all means, use this. This is great. And these were part of the game here. This was another game. And shinny sticks, they're kind of a form of stickball. Indians used to have games sometimes to settle disputes short of going to war. Stickball games are pretty rough. People would get killed. In California, we were doing a casino there, and one of the tribal members came up to me and shook my hand afterwards, and he said, can you work this into the casino somehow? And it was a big piece of obsidian. And that's it, right there. And I thought that was just absolutely great. Just beautiful. Here's an example of some of the architecture. You see the weaving here, the round structure, as well as the The other structure, I thought this was pretty cool. We're doing a hotel, and this is actually the rotunda in the entry. That's the shape of it. I like this little guy. Clothing. There's the obsidian wall in the high stakes area of the casino. And that's really cut black glass that we're shining certain kinds of light to get the real obsidian look to it. And there's the diamond dust ceiling that we're talking about. And that is a glass bead wall covering on the ceiling with glass balls hung from it as well, with lights mixed in. Now that makes that really special. That's all about them. And it's really expensive. Copper was really important. The woven structures that you saw, and you see some of the light elements in the ceiling, paying tribute to those, the patterns on the chairs as well. You see some of the baskets that we are using as column covers. A lot of the column covers in the casinos are so big, so giant, that you're not going to make them go away, so you might as well make a feature out of them somehow. Here we're doing the same with a pattern off some of the baskets, working it into the light fixtures and the pendants as well. There's the grinding stones in the buffet floor. So that makes it real. That makes it all about that place. It makes it such that it came and it was birthed there and it grew out of the ground. There's some of the patterns from the gaming basket. The gaming sticks that I showed you a few minutes ago, there they are as columns in the poker room. One of the trees that was very, very important to them. I had the wild idea to stick it into the ceiling, and when people hit jackpots, it lights up. This is a pine cone, stylized pine cone light fixture. It's enormous, but they have a pine cone that grows in that particular area of California. I've never seen anything like it. The lady handed me one time. And it's like needles. It's so sharp. But, you know, if you've got to build it, you've got to have a fixture that's that big in a hotel lobby. I mean, anybody can buy one out of the catalog there. Can you design one right there that makes some sense and semblance about people in place? And you'll always see a circle in my projects. They will always have a circle somewhere. That's a common thing when the Indian people circle fire and water. So Northern Lights Casino, almost to Canada in Minnesota. And of course it's the Northern Lights phenomenon, the Aurora Borealis, and the birch trees. That was two things in the water that they really wanted us to play at. Here you start to see some of the columns. You see, even in the light fixtures that we're doing, different lights coming out of a single fixture. And the patterns. And that's the center of the casino. And this changes, this computer program that we use that can change all these colors up to 16 billion colors. If you can think of that. As fast or as slow as you want to do it, so you can do all kinds of illusions there. The river of stars, and you see the stone, the wood, the exterior at night. I don't like doing a whole lot of iconography like this, but they ask us to do that. I don't like doing what I call Indian applique architecture. You see a lot of folks that design Indian projects, and they just build whatever kind of building they were going to build to begin with, and they take some kind of pattern and slap it on the wall. And that doesn't take any effort, or it's not any good for anybody. This is another casino in California, and it's pays tribute to two sets of mountains And this is a basket pattern off one of their baskets. I jogged the front of the casino to break down a huge mass in the front. They were coyote people, and they really wanted everybody to know it. So this tower is 70 feet tall, if that tells you anything about how big the coyote is. There's coyotes everywhere. This is the fountain that you go in. There's a mezzanine inside that glass tower that's about 35 feet up. And we had this tower made, this glass fountain made, the water fountain made inside this glass tower. And it's a dancing fountain, and it starts on the east, and a series of waters dance up, dance up, dance up. And they all come down, and then they go to the south, and then to the west, and then to the north, and then they all dance up together, and they go up to about 20 feet, and they come down all at once. And this is the one stream of water that pops at one time and goes all the way up in front of the mezzanine and come hopefully back down inside the pool. That was my main worry about that. And this is just inside that glass tower. This is a mural that's 180 feet long. And this particular tribe said, we want to be able to see everything from when you walk in the door. So this goes down 3 feet. This sweeps around you. It's a animated movie scene. It's really a movie set. This is all three-dimensional depiction of their mountains with the moon in the middle. And there's a series of coyotes that run in and out of here. And every hour on the hour, they come up on each side of the moon and howl real loud. And this is a whole set of their images from their baskets back here that we worked with one of their medicine people with about how to portray that. And this is our latest project, latest casino, Red Hawk Casino, outside of Sacramento. Triangles were very, very important to them. It meant your basket was full if you had a triangle and the triangle pointed down. Basket was full of blessings. So the trust work is all done that way. It's built into the side of the mountain, Sierra Nevada's foothills. 8-story parking deck. This is part of the portage share. Light fixtures. Lots of wood because you're right there in the Sierras. Wanted it to be pretty natural. This is one of the elevator lobbies. You'll see them still using triangles, carry that motif throughout. The carpets are from some of their basket patterns, all of the patterns that you see in the carpets. The light fixtures as well. This is when you walk in the front door from that portico share, you walk under this big dome, and this was an acorn cap, a stylized acorn cap that was turned upside down in my twisted mind. And you see all the different leaves of that acorn cap. And this changes color all the time, and it's in tandem with this ceiling element that goes 180 feet down. As you can see here, and goes down an escalator to a gaming floor below and some restaurants. And this all changes color. These are light sconces that are also the triangle shape. So everything's pretty well tied together here, and they've been very successful since this opened. There's your eagle feathers. At the end of that procession, you walk under these as you're going down the escalator, and then you're looking at the Sierra Mountains out here right in front of it. This is a Red Hawk Casino. And that's, I think, 150, and they're cut glass and copper and another material, I can't remember. But it's really a light fixture that's all built together in here. So you've got the lights and all the elements that light up, and that changes color quite a bit. custom light fixtures on the columns as well. And there is the gaming basket that leads into this portal that goes back to the high stakes area. And that is from their gaming basket that they gave me the opportunity to use as part of the design. And that actually is a light fixture. The State House. This is a 24-hour restaurant. That's one of the few restaurants that you have access to the view of the Sierra Mountains outside. So we want to do a real rustic look and bring the outside in to the inside here. So you see a lot of stone, a lot of wood, a lot of slate. And these niches are all cut glass from the local artists in the area. It's all about the place. Except the Asian restaurant. It's all about the Asian restaurant. And this is a project we won an AIA award for. This is the Camp Eagle Wing Center in Indiana. And I wanted to show you this because one of the phenomena here that I want to use when this is built, this hasn't been built yet, is this is where the glaciers rolled up right here. And you can go anywhere and see stacks of rock that are the size of a baseball that are colors like I can't even describe. And a foot under the ground, they're everywhere. So we were going to have those ground up and use them as aggregate in all the floors inside. It's beautiful prairie grass. This is the Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Cultural Center in Connecticut, where the folks that have Foxwoods Casino built this. That's the size of the football field right there. And this is an area where we had to put this in after we had the design pretty much done, where they wanted a formal sit-down dinner for 1,000 people there. The design of this was to pay tribute to the canoes, to the water as well, and this elevator over here goes up enough that you can see over the trees and see to the Atlantic Ocean. This is the largest repository of any written material and artwork about Indian people in the world. It's another view. Now you can see the upside down canoes. Remember the inspiration for that framework. And their theater. And here's the National Museum of the American Indian, the Smithsonian Institute. This was our model for it. And how am I doing on time?
Pretty close.
All right. I'm almost finished. There's a story I want to tell you about this. When we were designing this project really started with that circle right there. That's why the design started. It looks like a chamber of nautilus. It wasn't meant to be whatsoever. It was that shape, that root shape kind of evolved because of the totem poles that we have in the northwest coast. We were told by Smithsonian they wanted inside instead of outside where they're supposed to be. So we had to put them inside, so they had to stand up that tall. So when they had to be in a certain area, so that drove that design basically. But I was standing right here with our design team, and there was a guy from the Smithsonian that was standing there with me. There was another gentleman standing right behind him. I didn't know. And this has an east entry as well. And the guy from the Smithsonian said, there was any one thing that you could do that you just to make the site more workable for you, what would you do? And right out here is a big white tower. You know, a power tower out there. It's huge. It's right out here. And I said, I'd like to get rid of that tower because it's right straight ahead. You know? I said, I need to get rid of that tower. And the other guy was standing there beside us. He said, there's not a tower there. And I said, Sure it is. It's right here. It's about 80 feet tall and it's white. He said, there's not a tower there. And so, I was getting really aggravated at the time. Another Smithsonian person came over and he said, Ken, you need to let that go. He said, that's the communications tower for the White House. So, enough said. We let it go. But there is a finished product, so we build a model, you're going to get something pretty close. You had to see in all four directions when you came in this east entry, plus up and down. So we put glass block on the floor, you can't really see it. So you can see all four directions when you walk in. You can see up through the roof and you can see through down to the floor. The bottom level is all very, very heavy items. This is where the whole collection, there's 1 million items in here that gets shuffled in and out of the museum on the mall. And it's a major, major research facility here as well. But all the heavy items are on the bottom floor, the ethnographic items are on the entry level, and there's a mezzanine for all the sacred items that can't be walked above. Here's a shot at night of the East End. And this is the little museum in California, San Joaquin Museum, and we were on the site at a blessing ceremony with a local medicine man, and an eagle flew over. And they said, that's a good sign. We want this to be shaped or pay tribute to an eagle. Well, people try to do that, and they try to do it like an eagle's flying. Well, you can't get anything like that. You don't get the whole message. So we did a lot of research, and we found an image of this eagle standing here on the nest. So we started outlining the shape of this, and it turned into the shape of the building. And we worked the program into this. And then the building that you see has all the same criteria that the eagle has. The collection is housed under the wings, that you see the wings layering over each other for protection. And it was pretty aerodynamic in form and shape. So I want to say thank you very much. In my language, it's Yahweh. Appreciate everything, all the hospitality here this week. And there's one thing I can leave with you. I would like for you to, creed that I try to live by is treat your Earth Mother with the same respect as you do your Earth Mother. Everything we do. Thank you very much, Yahweh. Anybody have any questions?
Not a single one. Oh, in the very back. Pete, yeah.
Oh.
Firstly, it's very appreciating and inspiring to see you use different elements which are related to the Indian culture, and then you take inspiration from it and get an architecture out of it. But how, the manifestation into architecture, how does a lay person understand it? How does a lay person understand that this form is something related to Indian architecture? Say for example, in one of the projects you showed the triangles or the facade where the patterns have been taken from the basket. That can be any arbitrary pattern. So how do you make that judgment, or how do you give a call where this lay person can understand that this is coming from Indian architecture or Indian culture?
It's not always important that a lay person understands. You mean a visitor?
A visitor, or maybe
Another designer?
Another designer, or maybe another Indian who comes and visits the
Yeah, sometimes it's a lot of tribes want us to do things like that just to pique a person's interest. So they will seek somebody out and ask them that question. What does that really mean up there? A lot of folks are coming to Indian casinos, especially the hotels that are attached to them, because there's lots of places to talk about the culture there of the tribe. And they are wanting to know more and more. And you'd be surprised how many times they come up and ask questions about that, just because that's an interesting form, an interesting pattern, and they would like to know more about it. You know, sometimes, occasionally we'll put an explanation as you walk in of what you just passed, what you just saw, you know, a little picture maybe. Done that before on plaque as well.
How do you navigate making a building about the people that's about several Indian tribes, like the National Museum? Because you talked a lot about, for specific tribe museums, about making it about them, about the place. How do you handle that when it's a more general building?
We went through the same process with the Smithsonian people, the Cultural Values Workshop, but what we were doing there was hard enough to do for one tribe, but here we were dealing with 1,000 tribes, many of which were extinct, and this was for the people of the entire Western Hemisphere. That's
North and South America.
The Western Hemisphere. And we went around and we had the Cultural Values Workshop, and we got information, and we started plastering things on walls in James Polshek's office. It took a month after we got all the information to put it all up and sit and analyze and synthesize that information. And the only common threads we saw were earth with water, fire, and the serpent. So that's how we started that design. It actually has water coming down the sidewalks as you approach the museum. I've actually done fire inside the building on purpose 2 times also, which you're taught not to do right off the bat at school. We do the same process. It's harder to get through because people don't always get along. We had to put the Lakota and the Crow people's things side by side with each other, and they didn't want that. So we had to, make some amends. The people on the northwest coast didn't like it because we had an east entry on the building because the west was important to them because the Pacific Ocean is their sustenance. So they were mad. And so we had to trot this design around the country and show it to everybody in different regions. They were mad. I'm mad. And they said, we don't like it because it doesn't face ours faces the ocean. And I said, this faces the ocean, it's the Atlantic Ocean, it's just a different ocean. And they said, okay. True story.
Somebody had their hand up before and get your question answered.
Do the casinos that you've designed in the western part of the U.S., most of these casinos have gift shops.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if any of those ones in the West are actually selling art and things designed by indigenous artists.
Some are, some aren't.
I mean, I ask that question because you go to the Meskwaki Casino. I don't go there much. I don't like casinos. Sorry. But I've been, in the Meskwaki Casino and in Ojibwe casinos up in Minnesota. And I know personally some of these of the Ojibwe and Meskwaki artists. You don't see any of their stuff. You see schlock from Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's working against their own cultural values.
It is. And I see it both ways. I see some gift shops that are strictly about trying to promote the local artists or other Indian artists around the country, and then I see things like that. So it's not a regional thing. I see it in different ones all over the country. I don't like it. I think it dilutes our culture quite a bit. Thank you so much.
We want to invite everybody to join us at the back of the auditorium for some cookies and punch, and then we're going to do something that's a more traditional way of thanking a Native person, and it comes from Josh. Can you help? Where's Josh? Can you help? In the old days, especially in the plains, folks would be given the robe as a buffalo robe, as a wrapped in it, as a way of sort of thanking them for their support for the culture. Nowadays, we do it with blankets instead of buffalo robes, but we want to properly thank Ken from Art Place, which is the plan. So thank you very much for coming. So come on. So the seats are set up for the evening, punch and coffee, and please hang around and chat with Ken after.